So the 2025 Strongest Man on Earth athletes have finally been announced. The full lineup is out there and I can't wait to see this show. Right, so let's go through the list. We have got Mitchell Hooper, Lucas Hatton, Trey Mitchell, Austin Andrade, Tom Stoltman, Maxime Boudreau, Josh Spurgeon, Rain O'Neill, Evan Singleton, Bobby Thompson, Wes Dawinski, Thomas Evans, Andre Foytu, Eddie Williams, Shane Flowers, and Bryce Johnson. Now, there's been a little bit of, not controversy, just sort of a few comments about the athletes that have been selected. And I think that it's probably good for us to sort of talk about that. I think probably the most obvious one, and especially what a lot of Brits have been talking about, was Paddy not getting an invite. Now, for me, I think Paddy is a great strongman, a really, really super athlete, has got a massive, massive future ahead. I've sort of thought for a couple of years now he's definitely one for the future. And even after coming fifth at World's Strongest Man, I still think he's one for the future. Like, he's got a lot more to give. But I think that the way Brian sets out the Strongest Man on Earth, with the events that he has and the type of events, I feel like it lends itself more to not always the best strongmen in terms of like the best all-round athlete, but it's all about top-end strength. Now, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying that someone like Paddy is not strong, because he is exceptionally strong. He's great on deadlift for reps. He's so good at like carrying events, things like that. But I think at this stage in his career, I think I would like to see him continue to do well in Giants Lives, sort of get to a point where he's dominating those shows a little bit, which I think he can. I think that with his sort of blend of athleticism, speed, strength, everything, I think that those type of shows, Giants Lives, World's Strongest Man, really do lend themselves to his strengths. I think the fact that you've got 8 events, but a quarter of those events essentially are presses, I think that is a big part of it. Someone like Paddy is exceptionally good at a lot of events, but having 2 overheads, essentially he's going to be taking very low points on those 2 events. So a quarter of the events he's going to struggle with. Now, I think that's probably a big part of why someone like Paddy's not been looked at so much. I mean, I know he would have been on the list of people they were looking at, but I do think I would like to see Paddy, from a development point of view, carry on doing what he's doing, and maybe look at something like Strongest Man on Earth in a year or two's time, once he's just got that top end strength up a little bit. Now, I think, he's one of those athletes where he's an athlete rather than just a big strong guy. So I think Shane probably got the nod over Paddy purely based on that. I think the overhead situation would be a big part of it. I think that Shane is perhaps, not that he's better all round, it's just he's more consistent in terms of the 8 events that they're testing. I think he probably has because of the sort of big disparity in Paddy's pressing, and I'm not criticising him, I was exactly the same, my overhead was pretty poor as well. But I think that even though he will do well on a lot of the other events, I think he'll lose too many points on those. So I do think that if you looked at the 2 of them in a show like this, Shane possibly could perform slightly better across the board. But, we're not always just talking about Brits for Brits. So I watched a video with Pa, and he was talking about money and about like saving money on flights and things like this. Now, I don't actually agree with that. I think Brian really wants the best guys for this show. I don't think it's about saving money on flights or picking mainly Americans. I think that the guys that he's selected are probably the 16 best choices in terms of performances in other shows and the events that he's putting out and the weights that they're going to be doing. I mean, obviously, if we took the same events and reduced the weight slightly, you could then look at, someone like Paddy would probably perform really, really well. But I think where he just doesn't quite have that absolute top end strength yet, I mean, I'll be honest, I think it could put someone like him at risk of an injury, and that would be the worst thing I would want to see right now. So let's just look at a few of the other athletes. Someone like Bobby Thompson, say. I know there's been a few people talking about Bobby getting an invite. Bobby has proven that he can perform well in shows like this. Now, the more athletic type competitions, he doesn't always perform exceptionally well. Things like World's Strongest Man, he sometimes struggles to make the final, and that doesn't mean that he's a bad strongman. Sometimes it just means that the events don't necessarily suit him. Now, in a show like the Arnold's or something like that, he's proven he can perform well, and I think that the reality of it is he does have a huge deadlift. He does have a huge overhead. When things are heavy and not so much about athleticism, I think someone like Bobby, that's when he comes into his sort of strengths. So I think that it makes a pretty sound selection. I think it's pretty obvious why. And also he has done the Strongest Man on Earth in the past and been able to sort of hold his own. And I think that if you've got a choice of a couple of athletes, one where you're like, oh, is this person going to be able to deliver? I know this one can. Generally, you'll go for the one that you know can deliver on these events in these circumstances. I think that's probably the same with Wes Dawinski. I think someone like Wes, although he didn't make the final of Worlds, he came ninth, I believe, at Strongest Man on Earth last year, so he was kind of next in line anyway. But again, he's proven that he can do it. So again, it's like go with someone that you know can deliver in those environments. So I think someone like Wes as well, he's tough and he's mentally strong. So he'll just turn up, do the business, and get on with it. And probably he would want to challenge himself in a show like this. So I think Thor turned his invite down, and obviously I think the pet tear was a big part of that probably. But also with someone like Thor, it's sort of, I'm sure he wants to win these shows and win all the shows that he does, but he's kind of in a position now where, I mean, I know he's been filming a movie which obviously does hinder your training a little bit, but also, he's in a position where he's such a big name, he can pick and choose what works for him, and obviously if he's been filming a movie, he wouldn't be able to prepare as well as he would like. He has had the pec injury, so it's kind of, and he's been doing the sport. I know he had the break, but he's been doing the sport a long time. So why run the risk of injuring yourself at the stage in the career that he's at? I'm sure he's doing strongman just because he wants to challenge himself, he wants to achieve things, and maybe this just isn't the right time for him and the right events, and it just doesn't feel right. And like I said, I think he's sort of past that stage of like wanting to do everything. He's just been a bit more selective and doing the shows that fit with him and his life and everything he's got going on. And I think that it's probably a smart choice if he feels like that. So Thomas Evans, I'm sure, same situation as Bobby. He's shown he can deliver in competitions that are super heavy. He is very strong, so has that top end strength. So I think that's kind of makes sense. Andre Foytu, I would say, makes total sense to me. And actually, I think that we will see him thrive in a competition like this. He is extremely strong. He's young. He's hungry. I think that actually we could see him perform even better in this show than he did at World's Strongest Man. And he was extremely good there as well. So I think that, yeah, I think that that was a great choice, and I can't wait to see him competing in this show to see what he can do. Eddie Williams, I think that off the back of it is obviously making the final at World's Strongest Man. His deadlift is getting stronger all the time. I think things like the heavy yoke and stuff like that will be good for him as well. I think that he is good at those sort of big, heavy carrying events. He's got obviously the frame to handle those big loads a lot more. So I think that, yeah, Eddie obviously is great to have around as well, from a sort of just a mood change. And I'm not even talking about the singing. I think that having Eddie in your show certainly is a positive thing for the fans, for the athletes as well. I think that I watched a video with Tom Stoltman talking about World's Strongest Man and how it's all been super serious, and how this year felt like it was almost back to how it used to be. Everyone was like friendly and helping each other, and it almost did go back to that this year. And I think that Eddie was a big driver in that. I think that him, in inflicting his positivity on a lot of people actually changed the mood of the whole competition. So I'm glad Eddie got an invite for those reasons, but also he's a big, strong guy and he's getting better all the time. And I think there's some events that he can do really well on. Bryce Johnson, same sort of thing. He's a big, strong guy, can handle the big weights. And the only probably weakness he has at the moment is he's not quite so athletic. So, and I'm not saying he's not athletic at all, so it's not a criticism, but I don't think he has that super athleticism that some of the guys at World's Strongest Man have. But when it's a big, heavy show, I think that, again, he's very strong. He's got a large body frame to be able to handle stuff. Great grip. So I think that, again, someone like him, that would probably be a big part of why he got the nod. Shane Flowers, obviously, we talked a little bit about. Obviously, did well at World's Strongest Man, and Shane's like one of those guys. He's just a very good all-round strong man. He's pretty good at everything. I don't think that I can think of a real weakness that he's got. He's got no event that's like a real glaring weakness. He's pretty consistently good across the board. So I think, yeah, it's it makes sense at the end of the day. You know he's going to go out there and he's going to be pretty good at everything, which is kind of what you want. Obviously, those are the guys that have just been selected. Evan was another one. I know a lot of people talking about he tore his bicep at World's Strongest Man and they're not sure if he'll be ready. I actually had the same bicep tear as Evan. I did it in 2012 at World's Strongest Man. I tore the long head tendon, and I actually tore the tendon off the muscle so it couldn't be reattached. And I'll be honest, I carried on competing afterwards, as some of you would know, for a number of years, and even went back to World's Strongest Man and performed well after that, and got podiums at Europe's Strongest Man, podium at Britain's Strongest Man after I'd had that tear. And when you tear the long head, it's not as much of an issue as tearing the distal tendon at the elbow, because you've got two tendons at the top and it's basically just the outside one. So you just end up, your shoulder takes over a little bit more and things like that. So if you treat it right and do the right things, actually it doesn't affect you that much. So I think that Evan is kind of, just back training and seeing how it goes, and he's kind of just like, it's really not affecting me that much. And I know Eddie's had the same tear. I believe Larry Wills did the same thing when he was trying a bit of strongman, and obviously they've carried on doing stuff afterwards. I had the tear, it didn't affect me. I was still good at stones afterwards, still good at tyre flip, still good at loading races. So I don't think that will be an issue. Yes, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. Anyway, let's go over the guys that were already invited. Obviously, Mitch Hooper, obviously, was the winner last year, and we don't need to really go into how good Mitch is. He's incredible. Perhaps wasn't at his best at World's Strongest Man for understandable reasons. Obviously, he's got a lot going on away from strongman, and yeah, it's obviously tough to perform when you've got a lot of other stuff going on. But hopefully, by the time we get to Strongest Man on Earth, he can sort of be in a position to really perform well. I mean, ultimately, I never talk about people's private lives because it's none of my business. I just want to see athletes performing at their best and seeing who is the best. So hopefully Mitch has got everything in order, and things are moving forward so we can just appreciate the great athlete he is. Lucas Hatton, again, I think with Lucas, World's Strongest Man, the events in the heats didn't quite suit him perfectly. I think that, again, he's another one of those guys that performs well in these kind of shows. He's very strong. Obviously, great overhead, solid enough deadlift. He does have some real strengths. But I think with those super heavy shows, that's when we'll see him at his best. Same with Trey Mitchell. Although he was great at World's Strongest Man, he was really impressive all around. I think the only event I can think of that really sort of let him down a bit was the Hercules hold. But aside from that, he was super impressive, and he looked so strong. In terms of just that sort of strength, I actually think that going into this, in my mind, Trey's possibly the favourite, I think. I think if there'd have been the tyre flip still in there, then I'd have been like, oh, that could be a problem. But actually now I'm looking at it thinking, because Brian's looking at changing the tyre flip, I actually believe Trey is the favourite going into this. Austin, always been a big fan of Austin. I think he's a great strongman. Better at the moving events than perhaps people would give him credit for, just from looking at him, because he's just so thickly set and so big. But he's a good all-round strongman. But again, I think he'll perform better at Brian's show than at World's Strongest Man. Tom Stoltman, I think Tom, apart from a bit of a mishap on the stone event in the heats, I thought he looked absolutely fantastic at World's Strongest Man. I was really, really impressed. I think obviously the only thing really that cost him the win was the drop in a number of points on the Hercules hold. But aside from that, Tom looked in great shape. And I think if he brings that to Strongest Man on Earth, we could see him perform really well. I mean, we know what Tom can be capable of. So it'd be great to see him put in a big performance at the show. A few years ago, he had a bit of a nightmare start, didn't he? And then he started to really come on later in the show. And I think if he can get off to a good start, he could go on and win the show potentially. He does perform extremely well at times. I just think that obviously a couple of times he sort of got off to a bad start, and then he's had to try and claw his way back into it. If he can get that good start on the first event and he can keep that momentum going, Tom could win any show he's in. Maxime Boudreau. Maxime is a great strongman, great athlete. I think he got the qualification from last year, or if it wasn't last year, maybe it was winning North Americas. I'm not sure. Can't remember the exact reason he qualified, but he did qualify. Maxime's a good strongman, there's no doubt about that. And I know he's had a few injury problems over the last couple of years, but there were signs at World's Strongest Man he looks like he's getting back into form, which is great to see. I think obviously Maxime is a former podium finisher at World's Strongest Man. We know he can deliver. When everything's going well for him, he's fit and healthy. So there's definitely signs there that he looks like he's back on track. So I'll be interested to see how Maxime gets on. Josh Spurgeon is obviously qualified, from last year. Won the Open. Great deadlifter, I know. And he was super impressive there. I thought that obviously there was some great guys in the Open show. There was Josh and Andrew Burton, Nick Guardione. You know, there's some good I'm not going to say amateurs because they're not really amateurs. There were some really top level strongmen doing the open show to qualify for this. So for Josh to win that, obviously he deserves his spot in the big show. He's a really good strongman, and I know, like I said, he's a fantastic deadlifter. And obviously we haven't really talked about him, but Rain O'Neill obviously had to be on the invite list. Just won World's Strongest Man. So going into World's Strongest Man, a lot of people were telling me Reno is really good. I wasn't obviously that aware of, like, I hadn't seen him compete much and things like that, but he is unbelievably impressive. Big fan just from seeing him compete the one time. Obviously, yes, winning World's Strongest Man is incredible, but the way he did it, he's just so like mild mannered, but so like focused, and you sort of watch him compete, and he looks like a seasoned pro, and he's not been doing strongman that long. Great athlete, obviously, and you know, where he's been a pro rugby player in the past, obviously he can draw on that experience of competing in an elite sport at an elite level, and I think that it definitely helps. He wouldn't be overwhelmed by the occasion of being at World's Strongest Man, because I know, obviously, you know, I had a similar background in terms of like being an ex sort of pro rugby player, moving into strongman, and I think that my first World's Strongest Man, I wasn't overwhelmed by it at all, because I'd played a sport at an elite level, and I think you've been around all these people that are so, you know, mentally strong and focused and everything else. So then, because you've been around that so much, it's almost contagious. You know how to conduct yourself in pressure situations. And I think that Reno has that in abundance, as well as being a great athlete and extremely strong. So was mega impressed with him. I think that we could now see over the next few years a three-way battle, especially at World's Strongest Man, because Reno's such a good athlete, so's Tom and so's Mitch. I think on those more athletic events, I think it lends itself to all three of them. They're all super fast, great at all the sort of moving events as well as the static ones, and I think that if World's Strongest Man is going to continue to be that more athletic type strongman, which I don't think is a bad thing, I think that could be a three-way battle for a number of years. Now, I suppose we're talking about that a little bit with the sort of difference with Strongest Man on Earth and World's Strongest Man. I don't think that there's any problem with having two styles of shows, and I think that World's Strongest Man is kind of for entertainment, and it's for the casuals as well as the strongman fans, and they do their best to try and cover both angles. I think Brian sort of set his stall out of what he wants strongman to be. He wants to really sort of entice those, you know, like proper strength fans. He wants to test the guys in the way he wants them tested. And I don't think that there's any problem with either. I think it's great that we've got two different styles almost. I think there's room for both of them that way. I think if they were kind of both going down the same route, they'd be battling with each other more. But I think going with it in this way, I think that it's kind of like they're both different challenges to each other. So it sort of creates that bit of like, or who's going to win this one? If they were both basically the same show, you'd get the same winner all the time. Whereas I think in this scenario, you could get completely different results with some of the athletes. And I think that, yeah, there's room for both. And I think it's great. So I think that one thing I will say about Brian is he prefers that style of competition and always has done. This is not like a new thing. He's always sort of preferred that type of competition, and he's put his money where his mouth is and gone, right, this is what I see strongman should be, and I'm going to put it on. And like I said, I think there's room for both. I think it's great for the athletes. You've got two huge shows paying good money with good opportunities for exposure and stuff like that as well. because obviously it's not just about the prize money, it's about the money that you can make off the back of these titles. And the fact that you've got sort of two huge titles like this gets more opportunities for the guys, which is brilliant. So, yeah, like I said, I kind of like that we've got two different styles. I don't have a problem with it. We've got two major shows that are kind of very different within the same sport. And I think it's a great thing. But, yeah, I think that, I suppose the best thing we can do is sort of talk about it and just say, like, I am very much sort of not in either camp. Obviously, me and Brian have been friends for a long time. I love that there's all these opportunities for the guys. There's opportunities for guys that maybe don't do well in one, that do well in the other, and so on. And I think that the more opportunities there is for the top athletes, the better. I think that it's okay to prefer one over the other as well. And this is something that I've noticed with a lot of the strongman fans kind of have become quite toxic. It's like you can't be fans of both. With some of the fans, you've got to really be in one camp. It's like even the Thor Eddie thing that went on for years. You've got to be a fan of Eddie or Thor. You can't be both. And, you know, I'm friends with both in terms of, like, I'm friendly with Eddie, I'm friendly with Thor. I like both of them as people. Just because they don't get on makes no difference to me. And the same as with strongman, just because I sort of I've worked on both Strongest Man on Earth and World's Strongest Man. I don't have to put my sort of foot in either camp. I can like both shows and enjoy both of them for what they are. And I think that, yeah, just because you prefer one over the other doesn't mean you have to shit on the other one. I think that having this test with Strongest Man on Earth being super heavy, some of the athletes, obviously Thor being one of them, I think Matthias was very much in the camp of sort of, I'm going to sit this one out because it's not good for where he's at in his career. Obviously, he's had a lot of injuries and he's at the latter end of his career. I'm not saying he's, you know, planning on retiring, but, you know, he has been doing it a long time. I think guys like that, you know, they can sit there and say, right, well, you know, maybe at the moment a heavy show like that is not for me. And I think that that's perfectly okay. But the same way, if some of the guys that are like really good at these sort of top end strength events and not so good at the moving events, they could potentially in the future say, do you know what, I'm going to skip World's Strongest Man, I'm going to do Strongest Man on Earth, because that suits my strengths more and I can give myself an opportunity to earn more money that way. And I don't think that there's any problem with any of this happening. I think that all of us as strongman fans just need to get behind the sport, support all the big shows, support all the athletes, and try and make the sport a really positive place to be, because I think that that's been lost a little bit over the last couple of years. And obviously with the popularity growing, you are going to get more positive and more negative. But I just think that I wanted the sport to go back to what it was when I first got into it, and I loved, you know, the fans supported all the athletes. The fans enjoyed all the shows for what they are. And it was a very positive place to be. And hopefully we can get back on track now with everything. Anyway, that's enough about all that stuff. I think Strongest Man on Earth, love the lineup. Yes, there's a couple that you could argue and say, oh, you know, that maybe they should have been invited. But ultimately, I think Brian selected the athletes, regardless of what country they're from, that he feels are going to be the best for that show. And I think that I probably tend to agree with him for the most part. I think that he's got it right. For those events, it's picking the events, picking the athletes that are going to be the best at those events. And I think that, yeah, he's done a pretty good job as always. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. Let's see the guys go at it, lift some massively heavy weights, and enjoy the spectacle that it is. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully catch you soon, and take it easy.